Two people who stole a large sum of money find themselves trapped in a strange place, an endless loop they can't escape. The film begins in a bar, where a man named Joseph is waiting for his sister, Sydney. The two of them had stolen $7 million, and now the police are after them. To stay safe, they need to hide for a while. Sydney says they can stay there until things calm down, and once it's all over, they can return to their old lives and live better with the stolen money. As they're talking about their plans, they suddenly hear the sound of police sirens. Panicking, they leave the bar and head into a nearby forest, where they change their clothes and continue deeper toward the lake. They put their stuff inside, both of them carrying guns, and then start heading toward the house. Sydney had a lot of faith in her brother. Soon, they reach near the fields. As they walk through the fields, they hear gunshots. Joseph tells Sydney that they should get inside quickly. With that, both of them enter the house. The house was quite old, looking like no one had lived there for a long time. Things were scattered everywhere, and the floor was dirty. Now, let me tell you one thing, the person who gave Joseph this house also revealed its secret. The secret was that time travel happens in this house, meaning a person can go to any point in time, whether it's the past or the future. Not only that, but they can also travel across dimensions. Joseph believed that a person could be sent to another world. He thought that if they stayed here for some time, maybe all traces of the robbery would disappear. Before coming here, Joseph was given some important instructions, things he must follow carefully. Inside the house, there were two old clocks, and he was told to set their time exactly as written in the instructions. He did that slowly, making sure everything matched perfectly. Suddenly, the sound of police sirens came from outside. Sydney panicked and said they should run, but Joseph stopped her. He told her they had to go to the basement instead. As they went down, Sydney asked what they should do next. Joseph handed her a small note with 3 strange words written on it. These were code words, part of the instructions. Sydney read them out loud slowly. The moment she finished speaking, everything went dark. The lights went out, the clocks stopped ticking, and silence filled the house. It felt as if the whole place had been swallowed by darkness, like they were no longer in the same world anymore. And everything becomes quiet. When both of them came out of the basement, they saw that the entire layout of the house had changed. Everything was in its place, and the house looked completely new, as if someone was already living there. In fact, they had time traveled to a period when the house was newly built. Joseph followed Tyree's instructions and turned the clock in one of the rooms back, setting it in motion again. Sydney was shocked and couldn't believe that all this was actually happening. But the truth was, both of them were fools. Whoever sent them into this house wasn't here themselves, which meant something else was going on, something very dangerous. Joseph then explains that this place is completely safe for them, but only on one condition: they must stay here for 14 days. After that, they would return to their own timeline, where everything would have settled down. Both felt relieved thinking that at least no one would come looking for them here. The kitchen was fully stocked with food, and records and movies were laid out on the table for them to pass their time. And they just rest for a while. The next day, Joseph goes out for a short walk nearby. He doesn't go too far from the house because there's a boundary he cannot cross, something he was clearly told about. Meanwhile, Sydney finds some clothes in the house. The furniture and items inside look strange, a mix of old and modern things. But for now, neither of them care much, they just need a place to hide. In the evening, they cook dinner together and talk about some old, valuable items they found, then slowly begin talking about their past lives. It turns out their past wasn't very good. From their conversation, it seems Joseph never really supported or spent time with his sister. But now, being together again makes both of them happy. Then they start talking about how much they miss their mom. Sydney starts remembering a song she had heard as a child, which had always been her mother's favorite. The memory brings a wave of nostalgia, and for 2 weeks, both of them live quietly and happily, feeling a rare sense of peace. Finally, they decide it's time to leave, and Sydney plans to follow her daughter, so they make their way toward the basement. However, their calm is shattered when they reach the door and find it has been completely burned. Shocked and confused, they notice that nearby there is a church and an old mill. On the door, a message is written: if you want to go back, go to the old mill. Sydney, overwhelmed with fear and urgency, panics and rushes toward the mill without thinking. Joseph immediately follows her, trying to calm her down and make sense of the situation. When they enter the mill, they are stunned to discover that inside, the entire setup resembles a church, leaving them both in awe and confusion at the strange scene before them. It felt as if this place had once been used for some kind of religious rituals. Inside, they saw a corpse in a very bad condition. Next to it was a wooden stand with a note that read, "You are trapped in a time loop. If you are ready to stay here, sign below." Seeing all this, Sydney panics. She refuses to sign the document and, without thinking, runs out of the mill. As I mentioned before, this house has a limit that they cannot cross, and when Sydney tries to go beyond it, she starts vomiting blood and collapses unconscious. When she regains consciousness, Joseph has already brought her back inside. At that moment, both of them realize that they cannot leave this place. Once fully aware, Sydney becomes extremely angry and starts shouting, frustrated that after escaping one danger, she has fallen into another. Knowing the full truth makes her even angrier and astonished at the situation. In the mill, they noticed the same woman who had sent them here, the one who owned this house. Seeing her made both of them realize the harsh truth: there was no way to escape from this place. Feeling trapped, Joseph decides to sign the document. The moment he writes his name, a kind of connection opens to someone called Joseph Save, who calmly says, "Hello," and then closes the link. A minute later, when Joseph plays the tape recorder, the voice of an unknown man fills the room. The man speaks directly to Joseph, telling him that he shouldn't be here and that he needs to go back home. It becomes clear that this person knows everything about them, their past, the theft, and even their attempts to escape. Sydney tries to communicate with him, hoping to understand his intentions, and suspects that perhaps he wants a share of the stolen money. She even considers negotiating, realizing that dealing with this mysterious figure might be their only option to survive in this strange, controlling place. She just wanted to get out of there by any means, but the voice made it clear it had no interest in money. Joseph thinks the voice might belong to someone from the future or from another universe, yet they were now completely trapped. Sydney opens the safe again, and this time the voice says that if they want to get out alive they will have to kill one person, which shocks them both. When Sydney asks who, the voice replies that it will be an unknown person who will come there. They must kill that person and destroy all evidence. Only then will they be able to return to their own world. The voice says it could track them but not that stranger, and they don't know what era or time the person comes from. If they kill the stranger they can return to their timeline; if they do not, their existence in that timeline will be erased. The voice won't say when the stranger will appear or attack, only that one day the stranger will surely try to kill them. They return to the house with that knowledge and start making a plan for how to fight these threats. They hide some weapons around because they don't know when or how the unknown person will appear, and they take turns keeping watch. Months go by with no attack, and they still can't leave, but one strange advantage is that the food always renews itself. Because everything is trapped in a loop, if the fridge is emptied and closed, when they open it again it is full of food. Gradually they realize someone or something is controlling this place and that a large experiment is probably being run here. One day Sydney digs into the house's history. From old documents and pictures she finds that the items were collected from many different eras and do not belong to a single owner. In fact, the house has had no recorded owner since 1955. Joseph, too, begins to understand that they are being used as subjects in an experiment, and a lot of time passes as they live with that terrible knowledge. Sydney never got a chance to speak to that mysterious man again. Joseph, desperate for answers, went every day to the mill, trying to hear the man's voice through the tape recorder, but no response ever came. Months later, while Sydney was keeping watch outside, the unknown man suddenly appeared. Even from a distance, he was observing Sydney carefully. Just as he was about to shoot her, Joseph shouted, alerting her in time. Sydney ran quickly back into the house, and the man fired repeatedly, but he missed every shot. A struggle ensued, and the stranger managed to injure Joseph before dragging him into the mill. Despite his efforts, he could not fully overpower Joseph, and they realized he had been lying about something. At that same time, Sydney was inside the house near the safe when the mysterious voice spoke to her, explaining that they had no idea who this stranger really was, but it was definitely neither her nor Joseph. This revelation left Sydney both frightened and determined, realizing that the danger around them was far from over and that surviving this place would require every bit of their courage and cunning. The voice made it clear that this was not some future version of Sydney or Joseph, nor was it their mom or dad. Whoever it was, they would have to kill them to survive. When the unknown person finally broke into the house, Sydney immediately tried to fight, determined to protect herself. As she tore off the mask, shock and horror froze her. It was her own daughter standing before her. Joseph arrived soon after, and by then the daughter had hidden her face again. She too seemed intent on attacking, and in the chaos, Sydney tried desperately to stop Joseph, but he fired a shot. The aftermath left him crushed with grief. Later, he buried her lifeless body, overwhelmed by the weight of what had happened. Filled with despair, Joseph reached out to whoever controlled this strange world, begging and pleading to be sent back to his own time. He desperately asked for one last chance to correct his mistakes, to undo the tragedy and have a chance to save his daughter, anything to make right what had gone horribly wrong. It was the scene where she had come to the house carrying the stolen money, and the terrible truth finally fell into place. Joseph had traveled back into the past, hunted down his original self, and killed him, then returned to this time with Sydney. He confesses to her, voice raw with regret, that he tried everything to save her but always failed. Each time he thought he could fix things he somehow caused her death instead, and the cycle kept repeating. There is only one brutal solution he can see. Sydney must kill him now, give up the money, and go back to her daughter, and, most important, never enter that house again, because that doorway into the past is what keeps her alive in that other timeline. He insists that if she refuses, the loop will continue and their lives will be erased again and again. Sydney hears the pain in his plea, the exhaustion of a man who has been forced to become both executioner and victim, and she struggles with disbelief, fury, and a strange, aching compassion. In the end, overwhelmed by the impossibility of their situation and convinced this is the only way to stop the endless repetition, she raises the gun and shoots him. The shot feels like the end of everything and, at the same time, the first step toward a terrible kind of freedom. Immediately after, she runs away from there, which means the cycle will start all over again. Again and again, the same events will repeat. She will return to the house, and the never-ending loop will reactivate once more. This is when we realize that this is exactly how the story of the film ends, leaving the cycle unresolved and the characters trapped in its endless repetition.